Natural Habitat Adventures is pleased to be bringing you this webinar today. We're here to talk about swimming with Mexico's whale sharks. And we're joined today by Astrid Frisch Jordan. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about Astrid before I turn it over to her. Astrid is trained as a biologist at Mexico's National University and has been leading natural history expeditions throughout Mexico since 1991. For years, she has introduced our guests to her country's most remarkable wildlife and wild places. Her knowledge and passion as a naturalist are unsurpassed, and her warm and good nature make her one of Natural Habitat Adventures' most popular expedition leaders. And when she's not working in the field, she is actively involved in humpback whale conservation and research in her home city of Puerto Vallarta, and that's actually where she is today. Welcome, Astrid.
Hi, thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining me for this Mexico Extraordinary Whale Shark webinar. From here in Puerto Vallarta, we're getting closer to the summer, lovely weather. And this is the kind of weather actually the whale shark trip is about, also sunny and beautiful and hot in Mexico. So I'm going to tell you today a little bit about this magnificent creature. The whale shark is a huge fish. It's actually the biggest fish in the ocean, but we still know very little bit about it. There's still a lot to learn about this massive, gentle giant of the oceans. And in this map, all the red area you can see is actually the distribution of the whale sharks. Whale sharks are tropical fish, so they like it a little bit hot and tropical. So you can find them all over in this area marked in red on your map. But of course, even they're so big, they're not that easy to spot when you're out there. The name of the whale sharks, we call them whales because they are so big and also because they're filtered their food, but they're really fish. They are related to the sharks and the rays. They are cartilaginous fish, and they are massive. A big adult whale shark can length up to 66 feet long, which is really a lot. And they have a long lifespan. They can live between 60 to 100 years old. And we estimate they don't get sexually mature until they reach around 30 years old or about 27 feet long. So it's a long, complicated, slow-growing process for these beautiful, amazing whale sharks. So the reason we call them also whales is because they're filtered. So whale sharks filter their food, and we have only 3 species of sharks in the world that we know that feed their food. The shark you have on the left top corner of your screen, that's the basking shark. They like it a little bit more temperate, cooler waters. We don't have those basking sharks in Mexico. Then the ugly-looking, old-fashioned creature on the right side, that's the megamouth shark. That's another filtering shark. It's very pelagic, means that lives in very deep waters. That's why it looks so creepy and has those tiny, tiny eyes. We know very little about them. We just know that they are pelagic and they have been here on the planet for many, many years. And then the most beautiful of the 3 is the whale shark on the bottom on your screen. The whale shark in Mexico, we like to call it the dominos because they have this kind of like chest pattern on their back, like a domino. So that's the tiburón ballena in Spanish, or domino. But as all the sharks, even they filter, they have to have teeth, right? That's why the sharks are famous for their teeth. So whale sharks and basking sharks and megamouth sharks are not the exception. They still have the teeth, but they don't use them anymore. So these teeth almost disappeared. So in the photograph with the arrow on the top left corner of your screen, that's actually the rows of teeth, of diminutive teeth of the whale sharks. They have about 300 rows of these tiny, tiny teeth, but they don't use it at all anymore. They're actually just what remains from their teeth. But what they do is they're always filtering. They use their gills to filter their food, and they can feed on the top of the surface of the ocean. They can uh, filter on the column of water. Sometimes they're actively moving, some other times they're sucking the water into their mouths, and even they have very big mouths, and you might think that you can fit through their mouths. Probably you can, but you cannot fit through their gills or their throat. So they only eat very tiny, diminutive things that we find in the plankton. They eat phytoplankton or zooplankton. They like microalgae or krill or fish eggs. All this goes on the diet of these filtering sharks, and of course the whale shark. So depending on the time of the year, the location is going to be the food source they're going to be filtering. And actually, you might imagine it takes tons and tons of food per day to make this monster satisfied. So even they are so big, as I was mentioning earlier, we know very little about them. And it was until 2002 that it was discovered to the world that the biggest concentration of whale sharks happens in around the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. So this magic place is around Holbox. In the map on the left corner, you can see on the red circle, that's the island of Holbox. It's actually a sandbar. And if you look at the photograph carefully at the bottom of the slide, you can see there's one person snorkeling, and all the dots you see around, all those are whale sharks. So all these whale sharks come around this area of Holbox, that is this beautiful island, almost like a very big sandbar. And the reason we get this very big concentration of whale sharks here is because we have the current in the summer from the Atlantic Ocean funneling into the Gulf of Mexico. And this current, as you can see on maps on your screen, it's a very narrow passage between the Yucatan Peninsula and the island of Cuba. It's very deep first, but then it gets very, very shallow. Remember, the Yucatan Peninsula has this huge continental platform that you can see on the map on the right-hand side. So all this water is funneling different temperature, getting to this stretch in order to enter the Gulf of Mexico. So this creates what we call a surgence. It's a very high richness of water that produces a lot of plankton, a lot of life. So this surgence is what the whale sharks are coming to Mexico to feed on all this bountiful of food. So how much is too many whale sharks? Just to give you an idea of the concentration of whale sharks in Mexico, this is an aerial photograph taken from around 400 feet above the ground. And yes, all those tiny dots you see on your screen, they are all sharks. To be precise, we're talking about 75 whale sharks just in this picture. So it's a really amazing concentration of whale sharks that happen here in Mexico. It's not only unique because of the amount of sharks that you can find, but also because in other places in the world, like Ningaloo in Australia, or even Baja California in Mexico, or Belize, where you can also find whale sharks. Basically, in those places, the whale sharks are segregated in groups of males and females. They are also segregated by their sizes. You will find only the small ones, the medium ones, or the bigger ones together. But this doesn't happen in Mexico, in Holbox. In Holbox, we have all the whale sharks mixed together, males and females, small ones and big ones, all in this feeding frenzy around here. Why do they mix here in Mexico and they don't mix in the other places and segregate? We really don't know. It's one of the other mysteries to learn. And as I mentioned, just very recently in 2002, we learned about this massive congregation of sharks in Mexico, but also fairly recently in 1995, it was when it was discovered to the world that whale sharks are what we call ovoviviparous. That means that the whale sharks produce eggs, but they keep them inside their belly and then they hatch their babies alive. Because sharks can either lay eggs or be ovoviviparous. So whale sharks are ovoviviparous, and the way we learned this was through a fisherman in Taiwan that caught a female, and he was kind enough to give the information out to the researchers. He found 300 embryos inside this female, and the sex ratio was 1:1. That means 50% males and 50% females. That's all the information we know about baby whale sharks. We don't know if there's a mating season, if there is a hatchling season, what happens to all these babies and juveniles, where do they go, if they gather for mating. We really have no clue at all about all this part of the cycle of the life of these amazing whale sharks. The only thing we do know is, of course, they have predators. When they are juveniles and very small, of course, any fish bigger than them is going to eat them. But as they grow up, the main predator for juveniles are blue marlin, sailfish, blue sharks. But when they're fully grown adults, their only predators are great white sharks and orcas. So it's very little predation, and sometimes they can survive these attacks. As you can see in these photographs, these two sharks have these huge, massive bites, probably from an orca or a white shark, but they survive. So they are really very easygoing creatures because there are not many predators to bother them around once they get to be adults. So now that we talk a little bit about the sharks, their biology and their life cycle, let me tell you a little bit about how is it to go swimming with the whale sharks in Mexico. It's a really amazing experience. I love it basically because, first of all, is who wants to go first in the water, and usually they send the expedition leader first. That means me, because a lot of people don't want to go first. They just want you to go in first and see you survive the experience. And trust me, it's sometimes difficult to jump in the water for the first time with this massive creature, but they are so gentle and so nice. And what is my favorite part is that whale sharks in general are not famous for being very smart. They have very tiny brains. And then on the other side, they don't have many predators. So they don't care about us when we go in the water. As far as we don't bother them or touch them, they couldn't care less about us. So when you go in the water with the whale sharks, they do see you. You can see their tiny eyeballs moving and looking at you, but they just mind their own business, which is feeding. They couldn't care less about you. And for me, that's part of the very special experience, to be able to be in the water with a huge creature in its own environment without bothering it or without making it change its behavior. That's really very amazing, and it's very difficult to have all that combination of factors. So to go in the water with the whale sharks, we go on groups of two persons at a time with the local guide or the expedition leader. You have to wear a life jacket or a wetsuit. If you have a wetsuit, you need to bring it because we don't provide them, but we do provide the life jackets. And the idea is you go more like swimming. That's why I call it swimming with the whale sharks, because you have to keep up with the sharks. They are very big. They move very fast. So if you want to see it, you have to kick as much as you can to stay with the shark. Once you see the tail of the shark, that means adios, amigos. You are never going to catch up with the whale shark again. But don't worry, it's easier than it sounds. The expedition leader or the local guide, we will help you to make this a great adventure. The first times, it's a little bit tricky and difficult, But you will do this many times. The idea is you jump in the water, you see the shark, then you come back on board, the other team goes in the water. Meanwhile, you're catching up your breath and recovering from the experience. Also enjoying the sharks from the boat. It's really amazing to see the whole picture. So it's very enjoyable to be on board and also to be on the water, and you will have plenty of both. Sometimes you see more than one shark at a time, and you sometimes have to be careful of what's going behind you. You get so focused in just one shark, and sometimes there are some other sharks coming your direction or on your other side. It's really special. And if swimming with the whale shark would not be enough, sometimes we're lucky enough to also see giant manta rays. The manta rays come to this area for the same reason as the whale sharks, the food source. Giant mantas are also filtering their food, so they come here also for feeding. So sometimes in some trips, we're lucky to see these mantas along when you are snorkeling with the whale sharks. Sometimes you can also see the mantas, and if you're really lucky, you can even snorkel with the manta rays, which is really an extra bonus for this beautiful adventure. Of course, these nice nutrients, all these rich waters are the home of many other creatures. Holbox is famous for the lobster fisheries. We also have green turtles that come and nest on the island. And sometimes we're also lucky to see the golden or cow-nose rays that do their migration to the Gulf of Mexico. Other inhabitants that we can see sometimes when we are out there on the water are bottlenose dolphins that sometimes they join us for a little bit of the boat ride while we are on our search for the whale sharks. So many, many different things to see here in these rich waters. And as probably you've been figuring it out, our main locomotion transportation is going to be the motorboats. We use this type of boats. We call them pangas in Mexico. They are very safe, very stable, and very good. And these pangas are going to take us everywhere. We take a panga to cross from mainland to Holbox. That's only a 20-minute ride. We also take the boat to go in search of the whale sharks. That can take us from an hour and a half to 2-hour boat ride. And we also take the boats to go birding around the island of Holbox. Flamingos are also some of the other creatures that like these rich waters, and they come here for feeding. So we can see these beautiful flamingos around Holbox. We visit a very nice place we call the Island of the Birds, where we can see brown pelicans, olivaceous cormorants, frigate birds. Of course, there are magnificent views of the mangroves. It's a really very nice experience with many, many things to see. And we use these boats where we feed 8 persons maximum. Each boat has an expedition leader with them. So our groups have a maximum capacity of 16 persons, but we split in groups of 2 of 8 tops on each group, each one with an expedition leader, of course. So in most of our trips, you will have 2 great expedition leaders joining you in this adventure. And when we are on the island of Holbox, one day we of course like to see the island and discover the secret of the islands. And of course we have to do it Holbox style, which is by golf cart, because cars are not allowed on the island. So we have a very fun ride through the island to see some more birds and enjoy the sunset and see other parts of the islands we don't see on the boat rides, and it's really fun. We stay in Holbox for 3 nights, and this is the place where we stay. The Villas Paraíso, nice cabins, walking distance from the ocean, walking distance from the downtown. As you can imagine, Holbox is tiny. Everything is really walking distance. And for the little free time we have, you can just go enjoy the ocean, a kayak, go on the bicycle, go for a little shopping in the town. Very relaxed atmosphere, very safe, very beautiful, enjoyable town. But besides Holbox, this Yucatan Peninsula has a lot to offer. So one of the other things we're going to enjoy through this adventure is visit the cenotes. The cenotes are underwater fresh water systems, and this water filters through the limestone all through the Yucatan Peninsula. The biggest underwater system in the world is located here and is still under research. These cenotes were sacred for the Mayans because this is where they took all their fresh water, and actually that's where everybody still takes the fresh water from these beautiful cenotes. So on one of the first days of the trip, on our way to Holbox, we will visit one of these cenotes. We go swimming in the cenote more than snorkeling. It's really swimming and floating around, seeing the stalactites, the stalagmites in these crystal clear waters. It's kind of like almost like a little cave with some openings, but going in the water in the cave, it's a really amazing experience. And of course, we're going also to pay a visit to the sacred trees of the Mayans, the ceiba tree or the kapok tree. These trees we visit are taken care by a Mayan family that are very proud of their inheritance, and these trees have been on the land of their family for generations. This tree you see on the slide is over 700 years old, so it's a magnificent tree, and this family, besides protecting their ecosystem, they are also now starting to run local orchid nursery, which is really very interesting to see. And the point of entrance and exit to this trip is Cancun Airport, which of course is very convenient with lots of different flights. But we don't want to stay in the fuss and buzz of Cancun, so we stay very nearby in a town called Puerto Morelos that is just 20-minute drive from Cancun Airport. And we stay at this place that is called the Azul Beach Resort. Very nice, very easygoing, but very conveniently located because Azul Beach is just 5-minute boat drive away from the second biggest barrier reef in the world, the Mesoamerican Barrier Reef, only second to Australia's Barrier Reef. So on our last day of this trip, we're going to take this super short boat drive just to get there and enjoy some beautiful shallow snorkeling surrounded by tropical fish, soft corals, hard corals. It's a really nice way to finish the trip enjoying a little bit more of the nature, the wildlife that the Yucatan Peninsula has to offer. And something I always like to recommend if you have some extra time, I really recommend to try to arrive a few days early or stay a little bit longer and see a little bit of the Mayan ruins. You can see Chichen Itza, Uxmal, Cobá, Tulum, all very nearby. Just in one day, you can visit one or two of these Mayan ruins that are really spectacular. Of course, if you're a scuba diver, this is the scuba diving place. One of the best places in the world for scuba diving is just next door in Cozumel, where you can do a magnificent drift dive, which is really highly recommended. So there are many other things to do, because this is really a wonderful place of my country, the Yucatan Peninsula, with so many things to offer. We visit the whale sharks in the summer, because this is, remember, as I was mentioning, this is a time of the surge, it's a time of the high productivity. So we run our trips on from July to August. This year we're starting on July 6th and we finish on August 8th. Our trips are 6 days long, and we start every Sunday and we finish on a Friday. So there's still many things to discover and learn about this magnificent creature, the whale shark, or the domino, or the tiburón ballena. I hope you enjoy the presentation. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully you'll join us in one of our trips. And for me, that's it for now, but I'm open for some questions. I think we have some time.
Yes, we do. Thank you so much, Astrid. So I want to just remind our audience members about how to send in a question. You will need to open the GoToMeeting panel on the right, and if you don't see that, look for the blue flower again. Click on that, and it should pop back open. You might just see an orange button on the right with an arrow, and you might need to click on that to expand it. But once you get to that point, type in your question, and we will read it aloud. So there's a question here, Astrid, about dolphins and whether travelers will see dolphins.
Well, as everything in the ocean, it's all kind of luck. It depends on where the dolphins are and how the ocean conditions and many things. But I can tell you around 95% of the time we do see bottlenose dolphins on the boat rides.
Okay, great. And how fit does a person need to be to enjoy this trip?
It's really a easy, moderate trip. You just need to swim. You don't need to be really a strong swimmer. A lot of the time, the expedition leader or the local guide, we can help you. We like sometimes the life jackets because we kind of like drag you around if you need to. We give you an extra push or a little sense of direction. If you are more fitted, of course, it's less tiring. Sometimes the hardest part is just getting off the boat and on the boat. That can be a little bit more exhausting. But in general, it's quite easy. We have taken from kids to seniors, and it's not difficult, and we are always able to help. So in general terms, it's quite easy. It's just keep in mind it's going to be hot, very sunny, and humid, which sometimes takes a little bit of your energy away.
Okay, that's good to note. Thank you. And then what is included on the trip as far as food or any kind of equipment?
As in all our trips, everything, all the expenses are taken care of. So all the tipping, the boats, the food, and beverage, everything is included on the trip. Just in a few nights out on the downtown, some special like cocktails or things are not included, but basically everything is included. We provide also the life jackets, masks, snorkels, and fins. But I always recommend, and if you're a snorkeler or a diver, always to bring your mask. The fins are not that important. We always have extra fins, and they use a lot of place in your luggage. But it's always nice to have your own mask and snorkel. Makes it not much better. But if you don't have one, you don't need to buy one. We will provide you with a snorkel and fins and mask.
Okay, thank you. And then what about the accommodations? Could you talk a little bit about what they're like?
Sure. Well, the accommodations are both places at Puerto Morelos and Holbox, very nice. At Puerto Morelos is a little bit more high end, but the rooms, they all have air conditioning. We have double beds or king size beds available, and they have a pool. They, of course, the beach. They all have their private restrooms. So it's all the facilities with also the shampoos and things included. And actually, both hotels are kind of like all-inclusive resorts. So that means that you can eat or drink whatever you want while you are there. Something that's nice about the Azul Beach Hotel, that even there's a checkout time at noon, But if your plane is leaving later, or if you arrive earlier before of the check-in, that is until 3 o'clock, you can use the facilities. You can go for lunch or use the pool. So that's also very accommodating.
Okay. And then what about photography opportunities for those who are interested in photography? Are there good opportunities?
Yeah, they're great opportunities. They're for mainly for the whale sharks. There you can take very nice pictures from the top of the boat. So for that you will need you don't need an underwater camera, and you can bring a bigger camera, an SLR camera if you want. You won't need a very big lens for that because the sharks are close to you. You want more like a wide angle lens for that kind. But you have to keep in mind that everything on board gets wet. So whatever you don't want to get wet, you need a dry bag or a pelican case if you're going to bring a nice fancy SLR camera, because it might get wet. And of course, if you are into photography, underwater cameras that you can get underwater are really nice, so you can take some pictures. Of course, for the birding, if you are really into photography, then I will recommend to have a bigger lens so you can try to get some pictures of the beautiful flamingos and the cormorants and other birds. So there are many photographic opportunities, beautiful sunsets, the colors of the ocean is amazing. It changes from blue to all these turquoise green and emerald green. So it's really a great photographic opportunity. Definitely underwater camera. And believe it or not, if you're not that much into photography, these disposable underwater cameras are quite good. They have a big angle, so they help to get good pictures.
Oh, that's a good tip. Thank you. So there are a lot of questions about Isla Holbox. So let me ask you some about that, and then we'll move into some of the other questions about the experience on the boat. So, is there any scuba diving on Holbox during the trip?
No, there's no scuba diving on Holbox. It's only the snorkeling with the whale sharks, and depending on the weather and many things, sometimes we can do a very brief stop for snorkeling near the area where the whale sharks is. But this really depends on the location of the sharks, which is different slightly different every year. So basically, we can say no snorkeling or scuba diving around Holbox. The only scuba diving that is not included in the trip will be before or after your holiday. I lost you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And do you go by land or water from the hotel to Holbox, and is that included?
We go by land first. It's around a 2-hour drive from Puerto Morelos to the place where we take the motorboat ride. That is only 20-minute motorboat ride to cross from mainland to the island, and it's all included.
Okay, good. And then there are some questions about the time out on the boat. What is the longest time you are out on the boat, and how far out do you go?
It really varies, but the shortest boat ride to the whale sharks is 1 hour and a half each way. So we usually take off around 7:30 in the morning, and we return around 1:30 to Holbox. So it's the whole morning. It's really around probably 5 hours in the water, something like that, in the boat.
Mhm. Okay, thanks. And as far as getting on and off the boat, do you get back on using a ladder?
Yes, sure. We have a ladder we to get back on. Probably, as you notice from some of the photographs, you jump from the side of the boat into the water, but to get back on, we have a ladder to get back.
Okay, great. Thank you. And another question about, and Holbox, the kayaks, are those sit on top type of kayaks, or do they have the cockpit?
No, it's sit on top. In Mexico, mostly you only find sit on top kayaks because it's so nice weather and easy. So sit on top kayaks. We don't have a kayaking a specific time, but there are kayaks available if you want to go and do some kayak on the free time on Holbox.
Oh, okay, good, thank you. All right, let's see. I think you might have mentioned this, but there was another question about airport transfers and travel on land. Is that included, or can it be provided?
It's all included. We pick you up on the day of your arrival, and if you arrive some days earlier, and if you want, you can ask, and we can provide also transportation if you want to arrive if you arrive earlier. But in general, from day one on the trip to the last day, the airport is the hotel transportation and all the ground transportation is included. So let's say from the time you land in Cancun on the day one of the trip to the sixth day of the trip that you're going back home, everything is taken care of.
Okay, great. And then on the trip, how many days are actually spent swimming with the whale sharks?
2 days. We spent 2 days swimming with the whale sharks, yes.
Sounds wonderful. And there was a question about renting wetsuits and whether you can rent wetsuits and where you would rent those.
Yeah, unfortunately, there are no rental places in Holbox for the wetsuits. So since there's no scuba diving from the island really, and the water is temperature is really nice, nobody has wetsuits available for rental. So I have to say no. It's either or you have your own wetsuit and you bring it, but we cannot provide them or find them for rental.
Okay, thank you. We haven't really talked about weather, but there are some questions here, weather-related questions. One is about what the water temperature would be when these trips are going on.
The water temperature is really very nice. It's around, I'm trying to think in Fahrenheit, it's around 28, 30 Celsius. That's high 70s, 80s probably in the water. So it's really warm because it's the summer. Sometimes there are some just thermoclines on there that are a little bit cooler, but it's always in the high 70s really. Very comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good. Okay. And what about people who might be traveling alone? Are they able to be welcome on this trip and enjoy themselves?
Yeah, definitely. The single travelers are always welcome to join us. Sometimes if they want to try to find somebody to share a room, you can tell that to our sales department, and sometimes they're able to find a partner for sharing the room. But single travelers are always welcome. It's really no problem, and to have them on board is always a pleasure.
Okay, great. There's a question here about hurricane season, and is there a hurricane season?
Yes, that's a tricky question. We do have a hurricane season, and usually hurricane season is related to the summer. The peak of the hurricane season goes from around mid-August to September and October. So that's why we finish our season early in August. So far, since it's early in the hurricane season, there's never been a hurricane, but there's a slight chance it could happen. What we do have is rain. It's the rainy season. So it might rain throughout the trip. That's important to keep in mind. A rain jacket is important to bring, and sometimes we might get wet besides being in the ocean just because of the rain.
Okay, thanks. Well, what about underwater video? There's a question here about whether anyone does any underwater video of the trip that might be perhaps available for purchase.
No, we don't do that. We don't have a professional photographer on board, and some of our expedition leaders do have cameras, but most of the time we are, of course, taking care of our travelers and helping our travelers have a good experience. So it's not possible to do the video. So no, we don't have any videos or photographs to provide after the trip.
Okay. And what about the afternoons? Is there anything scheduled in the afternoons?
Sure. Yes. Just going back to the video question. Sorry, I'm going to back up a little bit. What we can do is sometimes travelers give us their cameras and we help them take their pictures. Like the pictures you saw of some travelers with the sharks, I take them with their own cameras. So we can help you with your cameras, try to get your picture with the shark. Of course, if the conditions are appropriate, it's not always that easy, but we can help you with the cameras. And the other thing, going back to the new question, is about the afternoon activities. We always have afternoon activities that, of course, are optional. One of the afternoons, we go to see the birds on the boat. We go in search of the flamingo and the island of the birds. And the other afternoon, we go basically around the island on the golf carts. The only day that we have really like a little bit free time is during our arrival to Holbox. We arrive after lunchtime, so we have a little bit of free time between checking in and dinner and a nice lecture on our arrival to Holbox. That would be kind of like the only afternoon, but we're talking about like just like 2 hours the most that are free.
Good. Question about the drinking water and whether it's safe on Holbox. Is the drinking water safe?
Well, all over Mexico, we don't recommend to drink from the faucet, but that's no problem. We are going to provide portable drinking water all the time, and usually when you travel with us, you get a nice water bottle containers to bring throughout the trip, so then we can be refilling that with purified water all the time, and then we don't need to use that much plastic. There will be plenty of water for drinking available. We'll take care of
that. Okay, great. All right. I think that we've answered all of the questions that we had. There are some that we will get back to on an individual basis, but now, Astrid, I'll turn it over to you for anything else you might want to share before we go.
Well, no, thanks very much. Hope you enjoy it. It's really, for me, it's really amazing. Mexico is very different depending on the places you go. Is very varied, and this part of the Yucatan Peninsula being so traveled, Holbox is like this jewel in the middle of the Caribbean, very off the beaten path, and the amazing whale sharks are really something. If you are into the ocean and the water, I really recommend it. The whale sharks, it's hard to describe this beautiful experience to enjoy the whale sharks from the top of the boat and also in the water with them. Both are magnificent experiences, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for joining me.
And my thanks as well. We'll get the replay out to everyone in just a few days, and we thank you all for being with us today. We will have another webinar in a couple of weeks, and we're going to be talking about the Galapagos Islands. So if you have interest in that, we would invite you to join us again. But if you have some interest in this particular trip, we've got all the contact information there, and we would encourage you to go ahead and get a hold of the staff at Natural Habitat Adventures so that they can assist you with planning your trip. And with that, we will say good day and conclude our webinar. Goodbye, everybody.